Hey guys, and welcome to this tutorial. In this video we're going to be covering this magic effect that you can see on the ground. We're going to be using a couple of textures and creating a few materials and a particle system, and then we're going to create a couple of little blueprints to help us use this in the level dynamically. So let's hop straight in. Now I have two textures that I've made, one being this magical motif and the other just being a ring with a slight gradient to it. This is very easy to make in Photoshop, so I'm not going to show you this, but I'll quickly show you how the breakdown of the pentagram. So I'm using all shapes here, so you can quite easily make this yourself. I will provide a link to it. You may not want to use it because of the runes that I've used, which I'll highlight here. These are part of an alphabet, so this is D-E-A-N, and that just spells my name. Now, I created a large circle, a slightly smaller circle, and then I've got other circles that have been added in, like so, which were then merged together, so this medium has been merged with these, which you can do by selecting two different shape layers, right-clicking and merging, and if they're overlapping then it will redraw them using just a single line, which cuts this bit off the bottom, but because I have another copy of the original circle, it draws that extra bit. Then I've added a hexagon, and again it's been combined with things. Another hexagon. I had a circle, but that was too messy, so I removed that, made it slightly smaller, added a pentagram around that, added another pentagram inside with a bit of star motif that was just a star shape merged, made another version of that and smaller, added some rectangles to divide the outer circle into sections, added some circles to the empty spaces, placed a dot in each of the big circles, and that was it. So it's all been done using shapes except for the runes. Those were found online and then brought in. So it's quite easy to make, but I will provide that for you, as well as the gradient, so that you can get the same scale that I'll be using. So let's create our first material, magic underscore circle underscore M. Now we'll take in the magic circle texture. We'll change to a translucent unlit material. We'll use a particle color node so that we can change the color in the particle system. We're going to need two multipliers. Take the top pin from both and multiply them together. Take the alpha from the particle color, and then we can just use the top node of the texture because it's black and white. Color into the emissive color, and alpha into the opacity. And now we have a nice mask that we'll be using. So we'll apply that and quickly save. Right click, particle system, magic circle underscore P. Okay, so now we're going here. Excuse me. Now under required, we're going to change this to our new magic circle M. Just give that a moment to bring those in properly. Here we go, we can see they're starting to, there we are. Now this is obviously not what we want. So what we're going to do is under spawn, we're actually going to change the constant to 0, and then under burst list, we're going to add an element. We're going to set the count to 1, count low -1, and time is just going to be left on 0. Now we don't want this to happen. What's happening here is we're looping infinitely, so it's looping. Every time it disappears it spawns another one. So go into required, and then under duration, emitter loops, just change this to 1, and that will only ever happen once. You notice it says completed, and then it's restarting the sim so that I can see it. Now in lifetime, we're going to change this to 0 and 0, and that will last infinitely, but away it goes. Goodbye, little circle. So under initial velocity, we're not going to need it to move, so we can delete this. and now our particle will just sit there, which is perfectly fine. That's what we want. Now, its initial size is very, very small, so we're actually going to change this to be 300 in all values, minimum and maximum. Next, in our color over life, we're going to set this to match the example. We're going to have 34, 7, and 1, and that's the color that I'm using in the example. But for this, I might change it up a little bit. There we go, a nice green. Or shall I go with more blue? Yeah, we'll do blue for this. Okay. So we have that. The alpha we're just going to leave default, and it's got infinite life, so we don't need a second point, so we can delete that. We don't need this as a curve, we can just change this to a constant, but I'm going to leave it as a curve. Next, we are going to actually give it some rotation, so we want rotation, initial rotation rate. You'll notice that it's very, very fast. We're going to change this to a minimum of 0.1 and a maximum of 0.1, which slows it down very nicely. Next, we're going to right click, and we are going to go to orientation, lock axis, select this, and then Z, which will lock it to the Z axis, because by default the particle will always just face the camera. You rotate and it will just face the camera, but if you lock the axis, then it no longer does, because it's stuck to where we tell it to stay. And that's our first piece of the particle system done. So we're going to restart it and save. Now I'm just going to drag it out so we can temporarily see it. Now you see we can't see it on the floor. It's because it's ever so slightly low. I'm just going to drag it up just a little bit. And now because it's only ever spawning 1, we are going to just restart level. And it will refresh it in here. Okay. So now we have it there. Next, we're going to make a new material, magic ring underscore M. The same as before, change to a translucent, unlit, drag in the ring material, go on a particle color node, hold M and left click twice for 2 multipliers, color and color, alpha and alpha. Alpha into opacity, color into emissive. Now we just have a ring. Apply. Save. Now we'll go back into our particle system. We'll right click, new emitter. In required, we're going to change this to our magic ring. In its lifetime, we're going to change this to a minimum and maximum of 5. You see them floating there. Their spawn, we don't want. Do we want? Yes, we do. We don't want it to spawn very much though, so we're going to delay their spawn a little bit. So we're going to set this to 0.4. So they're actually going to delay between emitter loops. Okay, now in initial size, same deal as before, these are very, very small. We're going to set these to 700 on all, which will make them nice and large. There we are. Initial velocity we do not need, so we're going to delete that. We just have a ring sitting there. Color over life, we're going to want to try and match the color here. So you'll notice I have 1734. We don't want it quite as bright, so we're going to go 1417, which will still give us a very similar blue. There we are, but not as bright. We want this to remain the main focus for this. Now in the alpha, we're actually going to create a new point. And we're going to have an in of 0 with an out value of 0, so they start invisible. In point 1, we're going to go 0.5 and then 0.5. And in point 2, we're going to go 0.53 and 0. So it's going to be a very rapid fade out, and you'll see why when we add some more data to this. So rotation rate, initial rotation rate, we want it to rotate at the same rate as the middle, so 0.1 on both. Next, we're going to go to orientation, lock the axis, set this to Z again. Now you'll see that they're spawning in a big ring. Last thing we add is we go to size by life, and we're just going to leave this as default. However, they don't seem to want to. They don't want to seem to do. Ah, I'm a dope. Do not leave it default. In the second point on size by life, change them all to 0. So we start at 1 and then they fade out to 0. And now the reason that we had our alpha the way that they were is because without the alpha being the way that it is, the circle would continue inside here and would disappear in the very center when it dies. But instead we're making sure that it's invisible by the time that it reaches the big ring, which is really nice. Okay, so we'll save that, restart level in sim. Now we can see it in here. Very nice. The next thing we're going to do is right click, create another new material. We're going to call this magic dot underscore M. And now change this to a translucent unlit material, and we're going to get a radial gradient exponential, a particle color. Same deal, we're going to multiply the colors and we're going to multiply the alphas. I'll just show you what this does. What this does is it creates a radial gradient, white to black. So this is just going to be a dot. We'll plug this into the opacity and into the emissive. Stop previewing the node. And now we have a nice little dot. We'll apply and save this. We'll go back into our particles. We'll create a new sprite emitter. Now under required, let's change this to a magic dot. The spawn we are going to leave at 20. The lifetime we're going to randomize 0.5 to 1.5. The size we're going to go with a maximum of 8 and a minimum of 3. Now their initial velocity is perfectly fine, we're going to leave that as it is. Their color over life is going to match the initial ring, so we are going to go with 1734. There we go. Some nice bright sparkles coming from it now. And then we're going to add a location, initial location seed, and we want this to try to best match our inner circle, so we're going to go 110, 110, and then 0, and then minus 110, minus 110, and 0. What this does is make sure that we're going 110 this way from the center point, 110 this way from the center point, but then it's taking the negatives as well, so we're going this way negative and this way negative. If we just did 220 in one direction, we'd have to make sure that this emitter was set in a corner, and it's just easier to have a negative offset than try and place the single emitter in the right place. So there we have all of the little dots coming up. We can restart the sim and save again. And now this is our particle system finished. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a blueprint. So we're going to right click, blueprint class, actor. I'm going to call this magic underscore circle underscore BP for blueprint. We'll open this up. Now we're going to add a component and we're just going to look for particle. Add a particle system. And now over in the right hand side here you can see the particles. We're just going to select our magic particles and put them in. There we have it. Now inside the event graph we're not going to need overlap or event tick, we're just going to use event begin play. So from the event begin play we're going to drag off the pin, get a create dynamic material instance for particle system. Now if you didn't want to get this one, you can also create dynamic material instance without particle system in brackets, and then what we just do is we would take this here, drag it down, and we'd get the same node as before and we just connect it. But it's being a bugger. Or we can drag this node down and then do it that way, so drag off of the particle system and create dynamic material instance, and that will work. And then within this, as source material, we are going to change this to magic underscore circle M, and now we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it twice because we want 3 of them because we're using 3 materials. Change the index of the second one to 1 because we always start at 0 in a list, and the third to 2, which sounds confusing. Now take the particle system and plug it into the target node on all 3. Now on the second one we don't want the circle, we want the magic ring. On the third one we want magic underscore dot. Now we're just going to connect these together to make sure that these all happen when event begin plays. Now we're going to right click, we're going to add a custom event. I'm going to call this magic. Now at the end of here we're going to drag off, we're just going to type in magic. So what this will do is at the start of play it's going to create 3 dynamic materials on our particle system, and then it's going to fire this custom event. Now on the custom event we are going to create a timeline, and this is what's going to control these materials. Double click on the timeline, and you want to add a float track which is F+, so we'll add this. I'm not going to name it, but you can if you want. It's set to 5 length as default. Now the way that I've set out the particles, it will work really nicely with 5. Right click, add a key, we'll set the time to 0, the value to 0, so it starts invisible. Now we're going to add a time 1, value 1, add, and then time 5, value 0. And we'll go back to the event graph, and now we're just going to quickly compile this and save it, because we have to go back to our materials and add something else so that we can change these. And what we're going to do is just take this, we're going to hold M and click for a multiply, hold S and click for a scalar. We'll call the scalar viz. We're going to start this out at 1. Now plug viz into B, the alpha multiply into this multiply is A, and then the output into the opacity. Now we're just going to copy those, we'll apply that, and then we'll go into the dot, and we're just going to paste this in, and we're going to add this into dot, and then we're going to do the same with ring, go into the ring, paste them in, attach them to the alpha, apply and save. Now we'll go back to the blueprint. What we're now going to do is we are going to drag from any of these, drag from the return value, set scalar parameter value, Now the parameter name, we called it viz, which was the scalar parameter that we created by holding S. Take the update pin, plug this into the set scalar parameter, and then the track that we made into the value, and now we can take the return value from all three of the material dynamic instances and plug them into the single thing, because we're going to have them all work exactly the same way, and we called it viz in all three of them, so this is perfectly fine. We'll compile and save, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to click on blueprints at the top, open level blueprint. Now right click and just choose a key. I'm going to use M, so I'm just going to type M, and you can find keyboard events M. So when M is pressed, I'm going to branch. Well, no, we won't branch first. We'll do it without the branch. I'll show you what we're going to do. So we're going to spawn actor from class. Under class, we're going to find our blueprint, magic circle underscore BP. Now we need to tell it where to spawn. So we're going to go into our level, find our player, click on our player character, go back into the blueprint with him still selected, right click, and we'll get create reference to third person character. Drag from this, get world location. We're going to get the location of the capsule component. Okay, now this, we're going to break the vector, so we get three different values, and I'll show you why. In fact, we'll delete this, we'll plug this straight into the transform. Okay, we'll compile this, and then we'll save, play rather. Now, while I'm running around, if at any point I press M, it's going to spawn the magic circle wherever the player is, but it's getting the player's capsule location, which is right there. So if we actually click on the player, you can see in his Z value he's at 226, and if we click on our original particle, we can see the particle's at 133. So what we're going to do is inside the blueprint, not this one, the level blueprint rather, instead of just plugging this straight in from the world location, we're going to break the vector. We'll drag from the X and we will make vector, plug the Y straight in because the Y is fine, but with the Z we're actually going to minus, so type minus and then choose float minus float. It's 92 units difference between our player location and the ground, and plug that into the Z, then we'll plug this into the transform. We'll compile that, and if we go into play, when we press M, it's now spawning them on the floor, and you'll notice that they're fading because of the timeline that we put in. So they're animated for one ring, then they fade. But they're not entirely finished yet. So what we need to do is we're going to go back into the magic circle, because right now they're persisting forever but invisible. So from the finished pin, drag off of this and then type in destroy. And we want destroy actor. So now when it's finished animating, the blueprint will destroy itself and it will delete. Now what we're going to do, because if we go back into the level again, you'll notice that we can spam this, which, although it looks cool, it's not preferable. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the level blueprint, and now in variables we're going to add a new variable, and it's set to Boolean by default. We're just going to call this can underscore sum. We'll compile it so we can add default. We're going to set the default to ticked, which means true. And from M, drag off and type branch. Now drag out the can sum, get, and plug this into the condition. So when M is pressed, it's going to check the condition. It's going to ask, is can sum true? or is it false? And if it's true, then it's going to do what we're asking it to do. If it's not, then it's not going to do anything. So now what we're going to do is at the end of here, drag out CanSum, and we're going to put set, plug this in. So now when it's finished, it's going to set CanSummon to be false, so it won't be able to press again. But we don't want it to be stuck forever, so we'll drag out and we're going to add a delay. We're going to change the duration to 5 because that's how long our animation lasts. Drag out CanSum again, set this, and click the button to set it to true at the end of here. We'll compile this and then we'll play. Now, no matter how many times you press the key, you shouldn't be able to summon anymore until the first one's gone. And there we have it. A simple magical spell effect that hopefully you can use in your projects. I hope that that's been helpful for you. Yep, I shall see you next time.